You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a belated review of Candyman, which is a reboot of it's actually a sequel of the original Candyman film from 1992. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it is a film that has stuck. It's a horror trope film that actually stuck and the character became memorable. A lot of those films weren't that great, but people have remembered it ever since, and it was only a matter of time. There were, I think, a couple of lackluster sequels, the premise being you stand in front of the mirror and say Candyman 3 times, and this very big, scary man comes and kills you. This time I was piqued. My interest was piqued by the presence as a writer of Jordan Peele of Get Out fame, and that combined with some excellent reviews from critics set me up to really appreciate this film, except it's not that good. This time around, the most interesting thing about this film by miles is the setting of Cabrini Green in Chicago. Cabrini Green is notorious for being the number one worst public housing estate in American history. Number one, above anywhere else. Throughout the 50s and 60s and 70s, it was a notorious hellhole to live in. Third world conditions, astonishing rates of violence, just a hopeless, despairing. It became the poster child for ghettos in America, like the worst of the worst ghettos. So it makes a good choice in having building the film there now, as most of it's demolished and gentrified, and arty types live there in big glass palaces and so on, which is a useful starting point because it goes into the nature of gentrification and so on. We have Anthony McCoy as a visual artist who lives with his wife, who's a gallery owner, gallery promoter, something along those lines. He has struggled to make polemic, interesting art. So he revisits this story of the murders of the original Candyman movie, and to inspire him to make, social art about Cabrini Green and its past and the murders that happened, which is another good element. All fine so far, and he gradually gets sucked into this world of the original murders and what actually happened, and it begins to consume him and his relationships, and murders start happening around him, like at his gallery launch and so on. Nothing wrong with any of this so far. I would say this film was a terrible letdown. For a start, not really much happens. It kind of has a long build and then sort of a bit of stuff happens at the end, but really virtually nothing happens. It's all sort of atmospheric build. Something that really grates on me, and I'm going to come across as a massive racist for saying this, I have a problem with representation in TV and film where I don't buy it, where I feel like it is distracting. And there is an awful lot of people that will make black television and black movies where they present a group of people which are so unrealistically detached from any sort of... I understand that you've got to make everyone, not in the ghetto. They've got to be successful. But I reviewed that Janelle Monáe film last year, and it was like they shoehorned her into being this big public speaker in these terrible speeches where the whole world was listening to what she would say, even though it was awful. And they keep making these, in this film, one of them is this acclaimed artist, and the other one that we're supposed to identify goes to soirees in New York and galleries where champagne's being handed out. And I'm just thinking, I don't like those people in real life. Why are they supposed to be aspirational? I understand, I get it. I've always had a problem ever since The Cosby Show, because I was never a high achiever at school, and they just rammed it home so much. And it's like, Dad's a surgeon, Mum's a lawyer, high-powered, of course. And I always liked Theo Huxtable. And then right towards the end of the show, the whole series, because he was a failure. I could identify with Theo Huxtable. He wasn't that smart. He wasn't successful. He was just a normal, believable person. And then right at the end, they went, actually, he's dyslexic. He's really a genius. And I was like, no. He's the only one in the whole show you gave us that was a normal person. And he did that. But here, it's so many films I see where these people are clinking champagne glasses at gallery openings. And I just think, you can write about normal people. They don't all have to be gallery owners and artists. It gets a bit much. So I found the people insufferable, and the world they lived in insufferable as well. None of the characters were particularly entertaining. They were all fairly dreary performances. Vanessa Williams showed up. She was interesting. I think she's a terribly underappreciated actress. I saw a couple of her 90s films. Maybe one of them was an Arnie film or something, but she was wonderful. Stunning looking, really good actress, really good lead actress. So she's in it, but I couldn't really remember much about her role. Considering Jordan Peele wrote it and how famed his writing has got, I was really surprised because all of the premise works on paper, but none of the narrative of that setup goes anywhere or means anything. It's never scary at all. It is occasionally bloody, but it doesn't present the Candyman as a particularly interesting villain. And a lot of the flashbacks to the past are a bit unresolved. And the whole denouement, it really does, it doesn't feel like, it feels like a cheapo horror with slightly higher production values. I wonder how much the 25 million budget, I guess, take it or leave it. But I was just so disappointed. It just didn't go anywhere. It didn't have enough of a story once that premise was reached. It just and then it had this rather weird, ludicrous sort of denouement, which it should have had that halfway through and gone from there to have a full film, a full screenplay, and it just didn't. So I didn't find these people interesting. I didn't really like them. I didn't think that the screenplay had anywhere near, like it had about 40% of the screenplay to get through a whole film. I would be surprised if this was 2 hours long. 91 minutes, I'm not shocked by that at all. Jordan Peele's involved in the film, I want a lot more from him. The first time director of a proper film is going on to do a Marvel film, Nia DaCosta. On this basis, I would say why? There's nothing here that would show that they are capable of helming a Marvel film. But then again, Chloe Zhao has just released, who is earlier this year became the first person to have a movie on my show on new release that I gave 10 out of 10 to with Nomadland, has now released the worst reviewed Marvel film in Metacritic history. The Eternals has got pretty trashed. Apparently it's really bad, and it looks really bad from the trailers. And I kind of hope the whole thing falls to pieces for Marvel. I want an end to the comic book era. I really do. So if they have a couple of massive $200 million movies that are just complete failures, maybe that will actually stop people making relentless reboots of superhero films. So I just couldn't say that there was anything that interesting about the Candyman movie. The mythos I didn't think was that scary or interesting. They tried to put social commentary in there, but I kind of feel like that was a de facto lip service of the fact that they were filming in Cabrini Green, and that was about it. A lot of it was a film about the relationship between the gallery owner set and their clinking champagne glasses world, which isn't a really big social commentary just because the people are black, is it? Doesn't seem to have much to do with the rest of the world or social problems. Gentrification is the only one that really got nailed by what was going on. So I think this is a real failure. What's it got on Rotten Tomatoes? It's got like 76% on Rotten Tomatoes or something. It's got really good reviews, and I just don't see how. I think critics at the moment, when they're greeted with a film like this that is potentially about social issues, they just switch their brain off and go, yeah, that's really good. I was amazed by the social commentary. Not that it's a really poor film that doesn't go anywhere, has really uninteresting, unlikable people not acting particularly well in a very dull story. So, Candyman, I'm going to give you a 4 out of 10. Barely a 4 out of 10. From feature album number 1, Remy Wolf, and this track really does show one of the main influences for me.